What is brainwave entrainment and what can it do for you? Do you struggle with finding inner peace and calm despite meditation practices, doing limiting belief work, and changing your lifestyle? Dr. Patrick Porter explains that 95% of who we are is controlled by the unconscious mind. Now, how do we tap into the unconscious mind? Well, through brainwave entrainment. Brainwave entrainment is a proven effective method to help train the unconscious mind to find balance and overall sense of calm, not only in the mind, but in the body. I chatted with Dr. Patrick Porter, the inventor of the BrainTap technology. It's a cutting-edge brain entrainment technology that uses light and sound. He discusses in this episode how BrainTap is building 1 billion better brains worldwide. So, if you're wanting more brain balance, better sleep, sharper focus, and inner calm, take a listen and learn how BrainTap is the perfect brain balancing solution for you. Without further ado, my conversation with Dr. Patrick Porter of BrainTap Technology. Hi, Dr. Porter. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Julie.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's honestly an honor, and I'm really excited about this. And like I told you earlier, I'm a little nervous. So you're so brilliant. Okay, can you give us a little insight as to where you're from and where you're practicing currently?
Right. I'm in New Bern, North Carolina right now. I've lived in all over because I used to own a franchise company, and when I was doing that, I would actually go there at first and set them up and live there. So I lived in Virginia Beach for quite a while, in the Bay Area after I sold that company, and then back out here where my grandkids are. And what we do here, we have a research lab here where we do our studies. So everything we're going to talk about today is backed by research that is either peer reviewed or it's actually quite a few of my studies are in PubMed. And we present this next year coming up. We've been accepted for 5 different talks at the National Institute of Health conference because we have a groundbreaking study we're going to be sharing where we beat out opioids in 3 different studies in Brazil. For women 55 and older with fibromyalgia, we beat out opioids in all 3 studies. So BrainTap has been used to do a lot of things, but when we started, the first thing we were doing back in the 80s was for pain control, but then opioids came on the scene and all these pills, and they said, we don't need this natural way. We're going to use these pills. So now what they're finding is in the study, we didn't allow them to increase the dosage. That's why we won, because opioids continue to get worse and worse and worse until the person becomes addicted, and then they have all the health problems. They don't tell you that. Unfortunately, they say, oh, these things are safe, but what's going on with all the lawsuits is we'll tell a different story, right? Because people are finding they're destroying lives.
Right.
And there's a saying that I have, you can't have the pill without the skill. We're the skill part. And, you don't really need the pill. I mean, you might need the pill for short term, to get you through what's going on. But to put people on pills that are addictive, I think is really a sin because they took an oath not to harm people. And I think there's more damage being done than help. Although
Absolutely.
people in pain need a solution. I'm in total agreement with that, but to submit them to a lifetime of, torture, really.
Absolutely. And then the pain of trying to get off. There's a lot of people that want to get off these pain meds or, some of the sleep meds and Klonopin. They literally can't. It's a fight for their lives.
Right.
It's wonderful that you have a solution.
Yeah, the brain will very quickly offload its work if you let it. That's why the dopamine addictions that we have today, everybody, whether it be drugs or alcohol or whatever's going on, it's because the brain basically is always looking to offload its work. Our brain does it takes a lot of the energy of the body and the brain. And so when we live our lives, if we can do it naturally and live the right life, like I say, the 3 different phases to brain health are: first, you got to eat right. You can't outthink a bad diet. Number 2, you got to move and breathe. We're designed to, like solar panels. We should be out in the sun. We work best when the sun's shining. And so we should be out there getting out in nature. And then we need to do some kind of brain fitness. Some way we need to downregulate our nervous system. If we can downregulate that nervous system, it comes back more powerful, more energized, and basically our best self shows up instead of our stressed out self that I mean, I don't think anybody's going to disagree. When you're stressed, you don't perform
Right.
as well.
That is absolutely true. Thank you for that. This is really exciting stuff. I'm excited to learn more about it. Okay, I'm going to back up a little bit because you have a really interesting history starting early on in life. So you started early into guided meditation at the age of 12. Do I have that right? Okay. And then that's where you began assisting your father in the Silva method. So let's dive into that. First, can you give that history and what is the Silva method, and then what piqued your interest in that methodology?
Okay. Well, first of all, the church came over, the priest and the sister, they were running the Silva method program. They called it back then the Silva mind control, but now they changed it to Silva method. I think it's a better name. And they told me they came over. My dad was a very gifted alcoholic. He could bug out at any moment. Things could be going good or bad. It didn't matter. And he might go on a bender for, 7 to 10 days, wouldn't even see dad.
Okay.
And so the church became really good friends because they'd bring over the food. So although in my book, I have a chapter how I was blessed to be the son of an alcoholic, because without him getting help. So they got him help. He went to one night seminar. They said, Michael, we're going to teach you how to relax. And he's like, I don't know how to relax. He was using alcohol as his drug of choice to relax. So during that seminar, they called it was a one-night ultra relaxation seminar with Silva, and they basically taught you to go to level. That's what the Silva method does. It's a technique that teaches you to go to alpha. So when you think of alpha is the neutral to the brain.
Right.
Most neurophysiologists would tell you that when you're it's kind of like your car being in neutral. You can go up or down from there. You can go to sleep, or you can wake up. It's also an energizing state. So you're basically collecting more energy. And we've shown now, because we can measure things now that we couldn't do in the 80s, that this collecting of energy is like when we sleep. How do we get energy when we sleep? It makes very little sense to the conscious mind, but the body is actually readjusting, resetting its biological system, but we're bringing in energy, as the National Institute of Health now calls it, our biosphere. So we have this energy field around us. So what used to be considered more metaphysical, now when you go to a neuroscience conference, it's sounding more and more like a religion instead of a science practice.
Right.
Because we're finding out this kind of quantum world that we all live in. So with the Silva method, it's super easy. And that impressed him enough that he came home and he said, we're all going to start as a family practicing this technique. So if you imagine 9 kids and 2 parents every night, I mean, I don't remember a time when I didn't practice that when I was younger. And I don't remember, I've done something every day since then, because it changed the way that I thought. I was a very angry, difficult kid. I was an artist, so I was very moody, emotional, so to me, school was a waste of time. I wanted to draw and paint and do my thing. And when I learned to go to level, I learned to channel that creativity and into sports. And so my dad would teach us through sport with Silva. So the Silva method you can use for anything. There are people that have used the Silva method and claim that their eyesight's got better. There's people that actually claim that they've grown their hair. I mean, I don't think any of those are substantiated in any research, but what it really does, I think the main thing that it does, it teaches you that you can control your mind. And now we have tools that do that, like we call them neurofeedback. So now we can use tools like Muse or, these other tools that are out there that we can actually put them on, close our eyes and change our brain waves. Even 10 years ago, well, now maybe 15 years ago, they didn't think we could change our brains. They thought you're a construction worker. That's all you're going to be as a construction worker. You're a lawyer. You have the lawyer brain. Or you're an artist. You're a right brain person or left brain person. Now we know something called neuroplasticity. Now, we didn't know Silva was teaching us neuroplasticity because we didn't have the research to show it. But when you get to alpha, we now know that when you're in that state, you get this burst of energy at the gamma range, which they didn't know how to measure back in the 80s. Gamma is a high frequency brainwave that we might get into a little bit later. And that really 10 years ago, they really didn't give much thought. And then there's delta, there's a delta burst. So when somebody says, why do people, when they get into Silva, sleep better? Why do they think better? Why do they perform better? It's because when your brain is better, everything is better.
Absolutely.
And the problem with Silva is that it's an active process. So unfortunately, like all meditation practices, only 5 to 10% of people do it. So they learn it, but they don't do it. So through the years, of course, I did it because my dad at first made us do it. And, it's kind of like exercise. I didn't really want to exercise either. I thought it's much more fun just laying around eating crackers or whatever,
Yes.
and
Yes.
or things like that. But once you get moving and breathing and you start to feel good. So at the same time we were doing the Silva method, my mother went to an iridologist, which is somebody who they can look at your eyes and actually tell you all about your health. In fact, I'm going to a conference here in Florida at the end of October, where every year the iridologists all get together. I like to support that organization because it changed the way my family thinks. In this iridology, you can look at the eyes and there's little markers in the eyes. I'm not an iridologist. I just appreciate and we work a lot with the eyes. But she basically told my mother that the problem with us, we're a bunch of spazzes, could you imagine going to church with 9 kids and trying to wrangle them all in? And so, my brother Michael, I write about him in my one book, they had to have him run laps around the classroom before they would start class, try to get rid of his energy.
Right.
But the energy was coming from, my dad worked for the cereal companies, and of course, most cereal, there's actually a study where they fed rats the cereal and they fed them the cardboard box. And the actual cardboard box rats lived longer, or mice lived longer than the ones that ate the cereal. So that's how good it is for you. But it jacked up our sugar, right? So here we are, we're all geeked up on sugar, and no, you can't relax. And Michael, it so changed his life that he very rarely eats sugar still to this day. I mean, he just doesn't do it. And so we took white flour, white sugar, all the dyes out of our diet. And between that, and that's why I always say food first. You have to change your diet.
Yeah.
So even though I'd like to say just to get BrainTap and your life's going to change, you can do that and get some really massive changes. But if you really are serious about your health, get rid of the sugar and the dyes and the white flour, and eat healthy. If anything, eat less. Whatever you think you're supposed to eat like at least 2/3 of that.
I have to say, it's what's fascinating just from the psychological standpoint that your parents were so outside of the box. I wonder how others in the community viewed your family for what you guys were doing. I mean,
we were pretty much weirdos, but
I doubt that, but yes.
Yeah, luckily we were really good at sports, so people liked us. They want to know, what are you doing?
Right.
So, and I was a 3-sport captain, and one of those guys that always was good at everything that I did.
What was your key sport? What was your big one?
Football was
football. Okay, yeah. I can see that.
But I got a track scholarship because I got hurt in football my senior year. So and once you dislocate your shoulder, they don't really want you too much, because especially when it keeps falling out.
Sure. Yes, exactly. So you go to track.
Yes,
I hear you.
And I could run fast. So but in the process, I mean, when I graduated, I was told I was going to be the next Bruce Jenner, which is, now I'm getting kidded all the time. When am I going to have my sex change? From my friends in high school.
Yes.
And then then there was a guy back when I was growing up called Yule Gibbons, who used to do a commercial for grape nuts. And he would say you could eat, he was always talking about eating grape nuts as this natural food. So when in my yearbook, I'm voted to be the next Yule Gibbons, because in fact, my track coach would tell me, nobody was taking supplements back then, really. I mean, not in our town. And so here I am at the track, and I'm doing these brewer's yeast tablets because I knew I needed vitamin B because I ran the quarter mile. So I take all these, and then I get the niacin flush, that red flush.
Yes.
I believe everyone out there should be on niacin still to this day, because that's good for the brain. Think of B vitamins as brain vitamins. So I'm getting ready to run, and I take my brewer's yeast in these tablets, and then I turn red, and my track coach goes, "Porter, don't take those out here. People are going to think you're taking drugs." So here I am. I have to go to the bathroom, take my supplements before I, and he said, "Don't come out until you're white."
You're doping up. You're doping up, but on supplements in the bathroom. That's a riot.
And I think that, those kind of things, when growing up, and just, my dad had a saying, and he got it from the Bible. I didn't know it at the time, but faith without works is dead. So you can meditate on it, you can visualize it, but if you don't take action, it doesn't really matter.
Absolutely.
So we always had an action board for the family. So everybody always, instead of chores, we had an action board. And so, when you have 9 kids, we always had, what are we going to do today to reach our goal for the year? And so once we got into Silva, because we learned that the subconscious is goal striving. When you learn that at an early age, and you start to think about what you think about brings about, So we started to realize that. And when we got in trouble, and this is something I teach every parent that I work with, when we got in trouble, we used to get spanked and sent to our room and told, think about what you did. Well, that's like the worst thing you can do. The number one worst thing, not the spanking. I don't think that's a problem, but if you want to spank them, go for it. But when you tell them to go think about it, you're actually hardwiring in that behavior. So what my dad did differently that I teach every parent is he had a book, and the first book he had me read was As a Man Thinketh. And he said, take this book, you have to read it. It doesn't take long, less than an hour to read the whole book. He said, read this book, come back and tell me how you're going to use these principles to improve your decision-making. And so I'd have to read the book. Most of the time I didn't read it. I just faked that I got the high notes and went out there and then he would quiz me and say, hey, you didn't really read it. Go back and read it. But by the end of summer, because I got grounded, but my grounding wasn't in my room. My grounding was read this book, come up and tell me what you're going to do today to activate these thought processes in your life so you make better decisions. Wow. And that's when I started, when I made the goal to become the captain of the football team. And I didn't even think about wrestling and track and the other sport, baseball that I played in the summer and being captains on those teams. But it was that just happened because in order to reach my goals, I had to help other people. So absolutely. I started clubs. In those clubs, instead of beating up the young underclassmen, they became my friends and we worked out together. There was no gyms when I was growing up. So right. Like now, I remember we started a fundraiser to get barbells into our gym and things like that. People thought that was crazy back in the 60s and 70s. You just didn't have that stuff back then.
That is amazing. This book, tell me it again. It's called As a Man Thinketh.
Yeah, there's also As a Woman Thinketh now. So they've changed the wording. It's a book called As a Man Thinketh. And really, it's taken Bible quotes that are talking about what you think about in your heart, you become. Now, what most people didn't realize was they knew, ancient tradition knew that our heart controlled everything. We have this thinking brain in our heart, these 40,000 neutrino cells. So they have emotion, they have memories. So what it basically told you was, so when we would sit down, my dad would ask us, when you're doing Silva, when you get to this level and you're just there you're counting down 3, 2, 1, it's a lot more to it. So this isn't a shortcut to learn Silva. Right. But if somebody's out there who's a Silva instructor and wants to coach somebody, I do recommend the course. It's very enlightening. I don't think it's the end of the road. I don't think it's the holy grail because everything evolves and changes. But Jose Silva, the guy who invented it, he took the best at the time and put it together into one seminar. He didn't invent anything. Everything he teaches was already out there, which is kind of what happens anyway in most things. The old saying is plagiarism is one source and writing is 3 or more. Yes. So, but what he did was he did a great job of putting together a seminar. So once you start relaxing and you start slowing down your brain and your mind and you start to really hear yourself, most people, if you were listening to how you speak to yourself, you would divorce yourself because most people talk to themselves so poorly. They have no patience for themselves. They use words they would never use in public to themselves, and we need to be more gentle with ourselves, more loving, and give ourselves permission to fail.
Yes, absolutely.
And because there's a saying, those people who are successful have learned to fail fast. So a lot of people never try. That's even worse. Failing, at least you tried, you went out and did something, and trying isn't failing. Failing is when you stop trying, when you stop doing something different. And the word try actually implies failure. So you have to look at the outcomes. What As a Man Thinketh does is it gets you to start thinking about what are you thinking about when you're not thinking? Right. Because you're always thinking, right? So 25% of the time you go unconscious.
Yes.
What are you thinking during those unconscious moments? If you can get control of that, now you've got control of your life. And if you start to realize that, and that's why they used to say cancel. Like if you said something, we called it shouldn't all over yourself. A lot of people will do that. So
yes.
So if you find yourself shitting on yourself, then you change that statement and you say cancel. Now in my processes, I have techniques like the stop sign technique where I say stop. You visualize a large red stop sign and you say, stop giving it energy, stop giving it time. And then once you do that, you think of 3 different ways you'd want to do it. Because if you only do the thing the same way every time, that could be a phobia.
Right.
If you only have this or that, like this way or that way, or my way or the highway, people say that, then that's a dilemma, right? But if you have three or more, you have choices. And three or more creates something in neurophysiology called the Fibonacci sequence, because all thoughts, all neurological activity, every plant, every animal, everything in the known creative universe is built upon the Fibonacci sequence. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. If you go to make a change, like I was on your social media before we started, I saw you saw a moose, which reason it troubled me because I went up to Connecticut. We didn't see a moose. You said it was once in a lifetime experience, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you were there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You remember it. So by me recalling it, you were there once. You recalled it again, didn't you?
Right. Yeah.
You did it again, did you not?
Yes.
So now you've done it 3 times differently. You understand?
Yes.
So
yes.
now you're building now you've done it 3 times again because we recalled it together. You remembered it, and then I asked you if you remembered it, so you recalled it again differently. So you did it 3 times again, did you not? So,
I'm doing it like constantly.
Right. So what happens is this is the way the brain starts hardwiring in memories.
Right.
So now you've done it 6 times, but you didn't really do it 6 times. You did it 6 times again. Isn't that true? Because we did it once. I could keep doing this.
Yes.
And that's the way the brain works. So when you're doing these, going to level, visualizing, you're activating these neural networks. Right. And the more we activate them, for instance, I like to tell people in Silva, opportunities are everywhere, right? So when I started my franchise company, my dad and I are sitting in Phoenix and we're having this conversation. And this is the way a therapist talk. We're great. We help everybody. Nobody fails. So we're sitting around being therapists, but we have no money. We're not making any money because the worst thing is you think you've got something great, but there's nobody to help. So we're sitting around talking, and I was only 24, 25 years old at the time. And I'm saying, yeah, we got to get something. Well, the phone rings. Dr. Paul Adams calls. He's one of my dad's trainers, and he has a clinic called Positive Changes. And he says, you know what? I want to open Positive Changes in Phoenix. Would you like to work with me? I'll hire you. You can run the clinic, and I'll give you an opportunity to buy it from me. So no money down. We get to learn how to do this thing. My dad promptly hangs up the phone and says, thanks, Paul. We want to do our own thing. I'm sitting there and I'm going, wait a minute. We just had a conversation. We have no money. It doesn't matter how good you are if you're not helping people, right?
Right.
I said, Dad, I didn't know Paul at the time, but I said, he knew me because, I'm Mike's kid, right? So I said, would you give me his number? I want to call him back. So I called him up. I said, hey, my dad was a little hasty. He's got money coming in, clients. I don't. I said, what would you like me to do? And he says, well, if you can get me this and this. And he gave me a list of things. I got it for him and FedExed it to him. He says, you're serious, aren't you? I said, yes, I am. Well, that business, not only did we start the business for him in Phoenix, I bought the business from him in 3 years, the whole business, sold that franchise into 2, but that would have never happened. My dad was right there in the room with me. He denied that opportunity. I saw the opportunity. Wow. So that's the difference between having an open mind and, being in, I was going to level saying, I need training from somebody because somebody's already done this. Sure. That's why people need coaches and they need mentors. And I've had a lot of mentors over the years, and I still have mentors that some I pay, some are friends, and different levels because we're always learning and growing. Right. But that's the way Silva will put you in an opportunity state. So if you think you know everything, that's the death state.
Right.
There's nobody out there that knows everything. As soon as somebody tells me they have the answers to everything in the universe, I turn and run. Because nobody has all the answers in the universe unless they're God, you can have a relationship with God, but I've not met God, in the physical. So there's nobody that I know that's walking around that can give me all the information. They can give me their slice of the universe. And sometimes that's good. And I'll take a little slice of that. And that's great. I'll take another slice over here, but you've got to create your own thing. And what I liked about Silva was when you go to level, you're in that state. It's more of a physiological state. So I was more kinesthetic, learner.
Yeah.
Visual learners sometimes have a problem with it because they want to see it on a chalkboard and they want to see the evidence, they want to see the research. And so when you think about just getting into that state, and it's a physiological state, now we know there's transmission at that state, which means we're getting information, cellular information, when we calm down, slow down, and the body's intelligence knows what to do to heal itself. But if we're in a stress state, that communication gets disrupted.
Yeah.
That's why a lot of people have these massive healings by doing Silva.
Mm-hmm.
And we've incorporated, people that know Silva, that listen to my sessions go, "You took Silva?" I go,
yeah,
for my whole life. That's what I grew up doing. But so I didn't copy Silva, because you can't really you have to go to the seminar, or you have to take the training to get the whole Silva course. But a lot of Silva languaging actually came from a therapist in Florida.
Okay.
That once I found out where he got his source material, I went and learned from the source material, so I'm always learning from different people. And I learned with like Jeffrey Zeig and the Ericksonian Foundation, and when I had an office in Phoenix, and they're the big deal in hypnosis, meditation.
You're a curious cat. That's what I think.
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you've always been curious, which I want to say, everything that you've experienced, which that's why I wanted our followers to listen to your story, because it's going to impact so many people, because people are trying to explore this neuroplasticity world. But the fact that you've been in it for way longer than I think most of these programs have existed. I mean, the current ones, DNRS, Scooped, all these ones, I think it's really going to hit home for a lot of people. But my other question is, everything that you've done with your father and your mother, did you incorporate that for your children and your grandchildren?
Yes. Yeah.
You did.
Actually, there's sessions by my grandchildren on the
Oh, that's cool.
So they want to do more too. Sophie, especially, she's 13 now, and they're reading affirmations. That's what
amazing.
I started out doing. So could you imagine, I was 13 years old. I still remember we got to write down what we wanted for Christmas. And at that time, we knew there was no Santa Claus at that moment. And so we knew mom and dad were buying it, and and $20 was a lot of money then. So, and so there was an alarm clock that I found that actually had a cassette player in it.
Okay.
And I got that alarm. I used that alarm clock for almost 30 years until it crapped out. But on that, I would record my affirmations for the month, and it was an autoplay, so it would keep playing the tape. So every month I would redo my affirmations, and that's what I'd listen to every night when I slept, because I'm very auditory. I was the kind of guy that I liked CB radios growing, doing those kind of things, because I didn't have to see the pictures. I didn't watch a lot of TV, although I do like movies and things like that. Yeah. But I'm more of an auditor. I'd rather listen to a book on tape than things like that. So all of this plays into that. So I taught that to my grandkids. I also taught to my kids. They would have to, instead of going and reading a book, though, what they did was, we had the MC Square, which was, when they were growing up, that was the name of my light and sound machine. Okay. And I said, go in and do a session and tell me how you do it differently. And they would go in, we had our children's series, and they would go and listen to a session, and they would come back, and usually it would knock them out, because a lot of times it's just their energy is just, and
it needs to come down. Yes, right. I get you. That's amazing. Wow. Okay. So you bought a franchise, you sold it. How did you then get into the field that you're in now?
Well, I started when I bought into Positive Changes, I bought the whole franchise. Okay. So we incorporated the MC Square into that. So for 20 years, you couldn't get our equipment unless you went through one of the franchise centers. We had 108 locations.
Wow.
And so these locations, that's why a lot of people go, where have you been? Well, if you weren't in one of the cities, you're in Montana somewhere?
Yeah, I'm in Upper Montana.
Yeah, we had one in Bozeman.
Really?
So we didn't last long, because in the winter, he came from Florida and moved to Bozeman. And one winter he said, "What the heck is going on here?
Get out of here." Yes, I hear you on that.
He sent me pictures. It was crazy. And he was a retiree. So, people don't go to Montana when they retire. They go to Florida. I did the opposite thing. But what we did was, in doing this, there was a woman by the name of Ann Weiss, and she wrote a book called The Master Brainwave. And it's still available out there in the market. And Ann Wise, she was the researcher. She was me back then. I was the grunt researcher. I was the one putting together. So at the same time that I was running the franchise, that was just a single location at the time, was my location. I was doing research for this new light and sound machine. Okay. And then we were using something called the mind mirror, which is now that software is still available. Now it's a lot nicer. At the time, it was a bank of LEDs, and it would tell people where they were at. We were also using something called GSR machines, which are still also available on Amazon. I always recommend, if somebody wants to really do the Silva method, you should go on to Amazon and buy a GSR machine. Galvanic skin response system is what GSR stands for. And you put your fingers on it, and you can set it for 10 cycles, and it'll go beep, 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 beep. But as soon as you get to 10 cycles, it stops. The sound stops. Now you're at level.
Interesting.
You get it's called biofeedback. Now you've got this, it's not neurofeedback. You can do the same thing with like a Muse or something like that, but the Muse gives you a chirping sound in your ear. And I used to really like Muse, but then they changed their software. They took theta out of the equation because people can't get to theta with sound alone. Really? And they found out it's almost impossible. This is a very small brainwave pattern. It's between 7 and 4 hertz frequency. Now with light, we can get you there every time. Every person pretty much can get there. Then that's the difference. That's what we found out with. That's why Silva takes you to alpha. Alpha's good, theta's better. So when you get to alpha, you create acetylcholine. When you get to theta, you create GABA. Right now in the drug world, besides them trying to create as many vaccines as they can, they're really researching GABA, because GABA is the key to sleep and to a lot of other things. But our brain, I should say, can release 30,000 different neurochemicals. So the world's greatest pharmacy is not on the corner store, it's between your ears. So we just need to activate it. And those are activated by brainwave activity. So I tell people, think of those brainwaves like Wi-Fi networks that are activating different things in your home. But if they're not on, those things are still there. They're just not activated.
So is that what you would describe as brainwave entrainment?
Yeah. So what we're doing with brainwave entrainment is, let's say that we wanted to entrain you to alpha, like Silva does. I would have a series of tones and sounds and lights that would basically be your brain and your nervous system be exposed to them. They would follow them, so that they call it frequency following response. That's the science. So as it's following it, the brain is actually learning. And we did a study that it's going to be published. We're talking about it with the NIH this year. And we did this in Brazil. We did the test here in New Bern with 20 people. Then we opened it up to 1,000 students in Brazil. And what we did was we took music, because we know music is really good for you. You know, if you listen to relaxing music, you feel really good. We wanted to see, what does the brain do after? So we had a track that was 15 minutes, and it was 5 minutes of nothing, so we could get a baseline on the brain, 5 minutes of the music, then 5 minutes with nothing, so we could see what happened to the brain, and then 5 minutes with that same music, but now with my algorithm in the background. And then they had 5 minutes washout. And what we found 100% of the time was, if somebody was to exposed to this music, they were all in a stress state. They listen to music, it goes down, they relax, just like you would think. They would go into this alpha because it was broke kind of classical music, which is what they studied. But then as soon as the music was done, their brain went right back to the stress profile. When we did that same music with our algorithm, it took most people 72 hours to regulate back to their stress state. So that meant we entrained their brain. Yeah. Music alone doesn't entrain the brain. So these are very specific frequencies. That's what I was going to ask. Sound and vibration. Okay. And they create what's called a cortical response, because the amygdala, this is the part of the brain that we get hijacked. Like if you've probably never gotten upset with your husband, but if you did, and you said something later and you went, man, I'm sorry, the emotions got to me. I didn't really mean to say that. This is what I meant to say. That was your amygdala that got hijacked. Okay. And then it doesn't matter. So next time you can say, hey, I'm pleading amygdala defense. I'm not responsible for what I say or do. Well, I hope my husband's not listening in right now. I just want to throw that one out there. Yeah. So so a lot of people, it's just like when we're talking about health, you can wait till you have a breakdown to have a breakthrough, or you can have a breakthrough so you don't have a breakdown. So when training the amygdala, that's what we're doing. We're training the body through cortical responses. It's not responses like our conscious mind. Even though there's light and sound, you're hearing that on a conscious level. This is really for your other than conscious, because 95% of who you are is controlled by the other than conscious mind, not the conscious mind. Most people are running around trying to change that 5%, which means nothing. There's a saying that I'm sure everybody listening knows, that the road to hell is paved with great intentions, with good intentions. And that's because your conscious mind intends on doing something, but then stress happens, the amygdala gets hijacked, and your priorities change at that moment because emotion drives behavior.
Absolutely.
So you have to change the emotional responses. That's neuroplasticity. That's the energy in the brain, because once the energy, it's kind of like letting the horse out of the barn. The old saying, the horse is already out of the barn, it's hard to get him back in or whatever. So the thoughts, as soon as they're out into the neurophysiology, they're already out.
Right.
They want to go somewhere. Now, if we don't have anywhere to go with them, that's called stimming if you're autistic. Too much energy. The brain wants to do something, but the physiology isn't responding. So you get this high activity of beta activity, and there's no place for that energy to go. But if you have that master brainwave that I was talking about with Ann Wise, where you have 45% beta, 30% alpha, 20% theta, in a little bit of gamma and a little bit of delta, then now your body's regulating energy. Wow. You don't have stemming anymore.
Okay.
You have creative thoughts. You have
stemming is what? Explain what
energy. It's energy without a pathway to go. So like when a kid's going like this, they're shaking.
Okay,
they have too much energy in the nervous system. They don't, it's like, if you could direct that energy, there's no way to direct that energy. So it keeps resetting. It's kind of like in the old days, we used to have fuses, and the fuse would blow and you'd have to put a new fuse in. Now we have a flip switch. So this is like the flip switch keeps getting flipped. And the nervous system doesn't know what to do. And then finally, using the example of an autistic child, finally that flip gets switched and they are now disassociated. That's why Robert Melillo, he's part of that group, the IAFNR group that gave me the Lifetime Achievement Award. He wrote a book called Disassociated Kids, because people think, oh, she's in a mood or he's in a mood because he's disassociated. No, he's in high theta. So these kids are either in high theta, which they're totally disassociated from reality, or they're in high beta, they're totally stemming. They don't have any alpha. And so I've asked many people, and if somebody's out there listening that works with autistic children, and I'm wrong on this, I'd love to know about it and love to see the study. But we've seen almost every case of autism, dementia, or even onsets of Alzheimer's, there's a lack of alpha activity, or what we call SMR, sensory motor rhythm activity.
Wow. That's fascinating. Okay. So my other thought, what's happening with kids in school that are being diagnosed with ADHD, and it could just go in a different conversation.
I don't think anyone should be diagnosed with that until they change their diet, because 100%. They're diagnosing somebody who food is a drug. So if they haven't changed their diet, they should not be diagnosing them with anything, because they're diagnosing a symptom of biological activity, not psychological activity.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate that. Okay, I want to go into your journey, and really believe that you're way ahead of your time. I mean, if I look back at your history, all the TED Talks, the podcasts you've been on, I've listened to, I really think that your father, your family, everybody was way ahead of time. And with the technology that you created, and then you put it out in the universe, how was it received initially?
Well, I tell people it's like describing atmosphere to a fish. So if you're describing it like we are here, people know about it now because we have the neurophysiology piece, and we can talk about brain waves and things. We couldn't talk about that at first. So I tell people, imagine going to the CES show, and our booth is there, and we have 6 chairs. Everybody looks like they've been assassinated because they're all passed out on the BrainTap. It was called the MC Square at the time. Behind us is the Rolling Stones playing. We're on the front cover of the CS show. Nobody knew who we were. There was a line of people, and at that time, they literally had booth bunnies, like the Penthouse Pets and Playboy Pets. They were in the booths, walking by them to get to our booth because they were so curious about what are these people doing. And at the CS show, you're walking. This was in Chicago when they used to do it there, not Vegas. And at the center, we became the darling of the show. So we got the best new gadget of the year because nobody knew what it was. There was no virtual reality. There was nothing like what we had. They were wearing sunglasses and they were wearing earphones like what we're wearing right now. And there were slingback chairs. There was no zero gravity chairs. So, the equipment really was about the same cost it is today. I mean, it would be equivalency more back then, but we haven't changed that price very much. And we sold about 100,000 units at that show.
Wow.
So by selling them, I mean, people put in orders. Now, nobody in the company, and I didn't own the company. I was just their spokesman and one of their investors, and I didn't really even know how to invest. I didn't have, that's a whole nother story. But I wanted the technology. I had no money, so I helped build it so I could get the equipment, because I never let money stand between me and what I want. So in the process of doing this, so we get all these orders from these big box stores like Circuit City, Best Buy, and all these stores. I don't know if it was Best Buy. I don't even know if they were around there, but they placed and they've made 20,000 units. They shipped them out to these stores. I think we got 2,000 or 20,001 back because they won't sell on the shelf.
Right.
When you say nobody knows what this is.
Right.
So what happened was the company itself, Light and Sound Research, they fizzled out. That's why I started the franchise company. I went to the manufacturer and I said, look, I know that they were called Light and Sound Industries, Light and Sound Research. I said, me, I was there with you. We were over here, we were making the equipment. I said, don't throw this equipment out. I'm going to buy it. He goes, you're going to buy 20,000 pieces of equipment. I said, give me some time. I will sell it. I sold it in 3 years. And I got all the rights to the equipment because they went out of business, and I would continue to sell it. And I started the franchise mainly as listening centers. So imagine, because people need to experience this.
Right.
Now we can, over the internet, what's so nice is they can go on, download the app for 14 days for free. And if they like it, they continue to do it. But back then we didn't have that. No. We didn't even have a voice on the sessions. So all this happened. And now when I go into a place like, I don't know if I said it here earlier or not, but the IAFNR people didn't even let me in their events 10 years ago. Then they gave me a Lifetime Achievement Award.
So crazy.
Yeah. So when I sold the franchise company,
yeah.
I was trying to get in, and one of my mentors, his name is Fab Mancini, Dr. Fab. He was the president of Parker College. It's a university for chiropractors, and he was helping me. So he was trying to get me in, and they said, oh no, we can't, this is a toy. Well, then what happened was one of the grandson of one of the founding members of IAFNR had a problem with ADHD, and they read my book, Waken the Genius. And they said, and she called me up. Now, he didn't call me up. She did, the granddaughter, and said, or his daughter, and said, I have a son that's having problems, sounds just like you. Do you think your equipment would help? I said, yeah, we've seen thousands of people, attention deficit, hyperactivity. These are things that BrainTap really excels at. At the time, again, it was called the MC square. So I get her the equipment. Next thing I know, he's calling me and saying, thank you for helping my grandson. This is great technology. Would you mind coming and talking to all my doctors about it? It's as if he didn't even know that I tried to get into his conference.
Right.
So when you ask how do people respond to it, it's always, there's a saying, the first thing that when something new is created, people will vehemently deny it. They'll say it's hogwash, it's not anything. And then they'll embrace it. They'll start to use it. And then now it's a foregone conclusion. This is what you do. If you're a neurophysiologist and if you haven't heard about BrainTap, you're living in the dark.
Exactly.
If you aren't using recovery, when people like Tom Brady's group they looked me up. I didn't seek them out. Because he was getting help with it, and so was his science officer and Alex Guerrero, who's the PT. They asked me, could we represent you to the sports world, because we want to use it as prehab, not rehab. You can use it for rehab too, but they want to do it because it has a neuroprotective quality. If you can maintenance your brain, the saying that I have is, it's better to have a breakthrough than a breakdown. Most people wait for a breakdown to have a breakthrough. They wait till they have whatever, 35 to 40 years old, they realize they're not immortal and there's going to be an end to their existence. And they start to realize that maybe life isn't what they were promised and there's no Santa Claus, and things go sideways. It's better to start taking control of your life early.
Yeah.
So in sport, the same thing is true. Why would you wait? You're having brain damage. Doesn't matter if the powers that be claim it or not. If you're hitting your head every play, there's something going on there. Your brain's like a bowl of jelly in a salad bowl. It's bouncing around. It doesn't matter what you put on the outside of that salad bowl. That that jelly is still beating up against the side of that bowl, and it's still causing problems.
So when so he uses this type of technology knowingly that he's going to have microconcussions throughout the game. How does that, I kind of want to dive
now
deep.
he uses it just for his jet set lifestyle.
Of course.
He's got to keep up with his new women, and
of course, I know now that Giselle is out of the picture.
Yeah.
Yes.
He's that was funny because Alex asked him if he was using the BrainTap. He didn't realize at first that he could use it outside of sport. Really? That's how our doctors, unfortunately, sometimes that we have 4,000 clinics, but they don't tell people that you can use this for other things. Some people think this is like a Swiss Army knife. It's not just a steak knife. You don't just have to bring it out when you're eating steak. This is something you can do every day. In the morning, you can reboot your brain. We call it digital coffee, wake up the brain. You can reboot in the middle of the day. You can go to sleep. There's 2,000 different sessions. So that's what's happening now. So what we're going to be doing with there's the new group, which probably when this goes out will be there, everybody will know about it. It's called TBRX. And we're going to be working with them for dementia, Alzheimer's, and TBIs and microconcussions. And they have a whole protocol. So they have Peter Cummings, who's their medical doctor. He had a concussion and used BrainTap. And then he's the one who was seeking me out because his sister-in-law is one of our BrainTap offices. So it was kind of like, it's nice when they look you up instead of me having to go out and try to sell them on. So I don't like to sell people. I like people to have their experience and then come back to me. Now we've been around so long, and I mean, it's very rare that I go to a show that people don't know of me and our equipment, right, especially in this field. Now, when you go to some events, sometimes, there will be people in the audience who don't know me. They've never heard of me because I'm not everywhere.
Right. I mean, well, this is huge over in Japan. I mean, I know that they utilize these types of technologies for business. So they have pods set up and with the light and the sound. And I thought that was really fascinating. I was surprised that a lot of businesses don't have this in the US.
Right. I just had a talk with a person who's putting in a world-class building down in Florida. It's going to be 4 years out, but it's 60 floors, and BrainTap's going to be incorporated into the whole building. And they sought me out too. They said, hey, this is a lifestyle building, so we need to have a place where they can decompress. Absolutely. And they're putting in this whole, and they want my help because I used to do the franchises. They want me to help design it, although they'll get my wife help designing it because she doesn't even let me pick out my own shirts. So, we'll figure out what's going on.
That's wonderful. I'm surprised too. I'm sure you've already looked at this, but schools, I mean, children in school, I think they need this. This is something that they're going to need. And and what you said, how it impacted you early on, doing meditation and what photomodulation does. I absolutely would be a huge advocate to have this in schools.
Yeah. There are a few schools that have it. There's a good one. There's a good video online of me. I was just looking for it, but they can look it up. It's Schenectady, New York. Okay. Where they talk about, we actually put BrainTap in there at first for special needs, but now they're using it for everything. We have a school in India that they can also look up that's on our YouTube channel. It's called the Creative School, and they put a BrainTap in every room. Wow. So it's kind of like an escape room so if the kids get stressed out, instead of them sitting there holding on to all that stress, they can go to the back of the room. And when I go to visit, they also have a 12-station brain tapping room for their soccer team. Mm-hmm. But when I go there, they all know me. I mean, the kids, they're about 140 to 160 kids at the school at any one time. Wow. And it's a K through 12 school, and it's learn at your own pace. Mm-hmm. And they're putting out scholars like crazy. And it's right outside of Bangalore, India.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. Yeah, a clinic that I go to, the doctor there talks about how he uses BrainTap frequently throughout the day. When he has like his 10 to 15 minute break, he goes and he sets himself up. It re-energizes his brain. It helps him because he's seeing patients all day long. He's like, it's honestly instrumental in what I do every day. So this is awesome. Well, I want to talk about meditation practices because I think it's really fascinating. I looked at statistics, and as people know, when they listen to my podcast, I do a lot of research and share data that I learn. And according to the www.goodbody.com, up to 6% of the global population meditate. Guided meditations are the most sought after. The meditation and mindfulness industry in the US alone is estimated to be worth now $1.2 billion. I was shocked with that. The flip side is that many still struggle with regular meditation practices, and sometimes about 25% experience unpleasant psychological experiences, such as anxiety, and oftentimes to just give up. Why do you think this is happening? What's the struggle?
Well, number one, they don't do it correctly, because think of there's a saying in the Bible that says you can't put new wine in old wineskins.
Okay.
And so what that means is you can't put new thoughts into old belief systems.
Right. Okay. That makes sense.
Okay. So you're sitting there meditating with your old thoughts. You need an upgrade.
Yeah.
That's why you need guided imagery. And you need the right guided imagery. Now, we don't tell people what to think. We teach people how to think.
Okay.
In my book, Discover the Language of the Mind, I talk about questions. So I'll give you an example. A lot of people are really up on affirmations, and I'm not against affirmations. I just don't think they're the most powerful way to communicate with your brain. If I say to you, and we'll just use one that a lot of people use because of manifesting, they say, I'm rich. Well, let's say that you've got a stack of bills sitting in front of you, and you're saying, I'm rich, I'm rich, I'm rich. And you're really getting into it. But then you look at the bills and go, oh, shit, I don't have any money. That emotion is going to drive the creation.
Right.
Not the statement.
Mm-hmm.
But if I said, what would life be like if you were rich? What would you be doing? Who would you be seeing? What kind of car would you be driving? How would you know it? You ask the right questions of the subconscious, and it delivers. Your job it's just like prayer. Your job isn't to figure out how to do it. Your job is to make the request.
Mm-hmm.
But our brain works best with questions. So not statement, because our subconscious, or that part of our brain that controls everything, is no more educated than a fourth grader. And if you've ever had an argument with a fourth grader, you're never going to win. So you're not going to win. But you can engage that. Just like I teach people, if you want a kid to do something, let's say you want them to make the bed and they're not making, you say, you know what, you can make the bed and we can have a great day together. We can go do this or that, or you can not make the bed and we can fight and argue and have, a lot of stress around here. Which one do you want?
Yeah, exactly.
So the brain wants to know what's the outcome.
Yes.
They're not making the bed because they're lazy. They just don't want to do it. They think, why? It's just going to get messed up tonight. It's kind of like schoolwork. At some point, somebody's going to say, why am I learning this calculus?
Mm-hmm.
Am I really going to go into, physics or whatever? And so the brain shuts off. So I don't want to do that anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Well, it's so interesting I'm just going to share a little bit with the clients that I work with. A lot of them come to me because they have health anxiety because of my history. And so there's a relatability factor, but a lot of them are like, I just want to feel at peace with myself. And, doing these affirmations, I'm like, because they'd go to another program or whatever, like, well, it's just, I feel at peace. And I'm like, okay, well, what the hell does that even mean? What does feeling at peace mean? How do you bring calm into your life? What does calm feel like to you? So I think and we're going to talk about your BrainTap library, which I think is phenomenal. So I think the idea and this whole science behind affirmations, I think we need more people like you talking about that, because when I was getting that shoved down my throat, I did not believe anything that I was telling myself on any level. And I think you're right. You have to ask those questions, and it has to be more finite. And then what do you need? It's like, I want $1 million. Well, but I need to be financially stable right now. Well, what do you need to do about that? Right. So I love what you just said, because I think that's really important.
In my books, two of my books, one's for therapists, the one Discover Language of the Mind's for therapists, but the Awaken the Genius, I have what I call impact words. These are what you need to learn. These impact words, there's words that impact you that are different than impact me, but you can find them out. As an example, if you want to do something, there's something that motivates you. So if I asked you the question, what has to be present for you in a job for you to really enjoy it? If I was going to ask you to do a task or work for me, what would have to be present in that experience for you to say, wow, Dr. Porter, I really want to do that job?
Are you asking me that?
Yeah.
Well, I think the outcome is kind of the big thing. Do I want to do it because it's enjoyable? Like, is there going to be some sort of, thing that comes out of it that's going to benefit me.
Right.
Right?
Right. So you're saying if I had a job for you that was
Yeah.
enjoyable, that
Yes.
had a benefit for you,
Yes.
that allowed you the freedom to be yourself, would you be interested?
1,000%.
Right. Because those are your words, right? So
Right.
if I was to motivate you with an affirmation, I'd say, wow, the journey to financial freedom is enjoyable. There's an outcome in it. When I say no to this thing because I'm investing over here for that thing, you start to think about these words, you just plug them in. And I have a whole series. So that's how you do it. So when you find out what your mobilization is, now during this election time, you're going to hear politicians use them all the time.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
they're
Oh,
in,
yeah.
in language, they're called nominalizations. So what they did is they took a verb and made it a noun, like
Of
freedom,
course. Of
flexibility,
course. Yes.
things like that. So the next thing is, what's your relationship with yourself and your future? Because a lot of people get to where they are going, but they have what they call imposter syndrome.
Yes.
They get there and they don't know who they are anymore.
Right.
They sold their soul on the way to, whatever it was, because
Yeah.
they never knew this was what it was going to be like. So if you think about in your relationship, there's certain things, not the individual, but what qualities does an individual need for you to want to work with them or be with them? So, and I could ask you, you could write those down. If you were a client of mine, I would be asking you those questions. And the way I usually frame it is I'll say, you know what, I'm going to ask you some questions. They're going to have nothing at all to do with our therapy, but they're going to tell me how your brain operates. And they're 4 easy questions. What do you want in a job to make it successful? And just write down the bullet points. What do you want in a relationship? Just write down the bullet points. What has to be in a hobby for you to enjoy it? Not the hobby, but what do you get out of it? Like,
Yeah.
what do you do? And then number 4 is, how do you know you've done a good job? Most people don't know when they've done a good job. For instance, if you were to clean the garage and you were to do a great job, do you know it's a great job? Or does somebody have to come out and say, wow, this is a great looking garage, and
Right.
go, oh, thank you. The internally motivated people are going to be the most successful.
Yes.
So my job was always to take clients that weren't internally motivated and teach them to be internally motivated, because there's no cheering squad waiting for you when you wake up in the morning. There's nobody at the end of the day that says, hey, Julie, you did a great job. Hey,
Right.
let's celebrate you. No, you got to do that for yourself.
Absolutely.
Every once in a while you get a data boy, but most of the time you don't. They got their own stuff going on.
Right.
You've got to treat your life. If I could convince you that you are your hobby, we spend all of our extra time and money on our hobbies.
Mm-hmm.
We're really trying to find ourselves through our hobbies.
That's true.
Why don't we find ourselves? Then our hobbies will evolve. Then our life mission becomes our hobby.
Yes.
And it's all based on language. Words drive the world. That's why they call them spells, right? And when you have these language patterns or these affirmations, you're affirming these things. But the problem is that the emotion isn't driving that behavior.
Yes.
And then number 2, you have to always state anything relational, like your relationship with money or your relationships just in general with people,
Right.
your significant other, all of those, there's certain expectations you have. Now, what you'll find with these words, if you do these exercises, anybody listening, you're going to find that you could then take these words and put them on a list and rank them as your values.
Oh my God.
And so
That's
now
amazing.
you have your value system. And what I did in my franchise was I taught therapists a system. I could get somebody's values in less than 3 minutes without them telling me their values. Because as soon as I ask you to tell me your values, you're going to tell me what you think I want to hear about your values.
Right.
You're going to say, oh, this is what he wants to hear. He's a fiscal conservative or whatever. He's going to do that, and you're going to tell him these things. But and there's a saying, nobody argues with their own information. So
Yes.
you're going to disclose to me your most intimate information in these nominalizations, because every time I say those words, like if we're having an enjoyable time here, having a conversation, and you're going to get something out of it. If I kept saying those kind of words to you, you'd keep going, wow, that guy's pretty cool. He knows me. He gets
Right.
me. And all I have to
Right.
do is just drop those words in. That's what politicians do. So I
Yes.
said, these people are manipulating us. And if you don't know that they are, you think they're really smart.
Right.
These are rented idiots that, they every 4 years they get replaced or they become lifetime idiots
Yes.
and they're not working for us anymore. But people think, oh my God, they said they're going to pay our student loans off. Oh my God. No, there's nothing free. you got to step back and go, somebody's paying for those student loans. And it's not who you think. Yeah, it's the taxpayers. And so, all these things, and I'm not against, if they want to give things away for free, I'm just saying that when I listen to a politician, I'm listening for those buzzwords. And then I'll listen again. Are they still using those words in the next one? Or did their speechwriter? That's why people like Obama can only talk with a teleprompter.
I didn't say it, you said it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
He has a teleprompter. He's the most elegant, wonderful speech guy.
Yes. Yeah.
But you get him to talk off the cuff.
But you have this knowledge. 99.9% of the US world does not, which I think is fascinating. You really opened my mind up on that one.
Right.
I'm going to be listening.
Oh, no, that's not it. The government's only out for our good. No, the government's out for its own good. They've got bills to pay, and they got people paying them to make sure that they, whatever, they're getting free bird feeders and things, whatever, it's the most crazy thing. It used to be called a bribe. Now it's called, whatever they do in Washington.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Oh my gosh. We could go on it. We just need to do another interview. We can talk about that on another. Okay. Well, thank you so much. I think the wording is so powerful and everything that you just said. Okay. Let's go into the brainwave entrainment. And then I want to talk more specifically about the product, the technology, because I think it's super amazing and super fascinating. So talk about photomodulation. Let's talk about photomodulation, show us.
Yeah, I'll show you here. When I turn this on, this is the headset if you're watching the video, and there's lights in the ears. So a lot of people go, what's the lights in the ears for? And there's going to be flashing lights in the visor that you really can't see on here, but there's 5 different features to that. So the light is actually being absorbed by the hemoglobin in the blood, and that's circulating through the body. They call that photobiomodulation. So that's happening as a byproduct. But each of these even though this looks to be solid, it's not solid. Okay. It changes every 2 minutes to a different Nogier frequency. Dr. Nogier, he's responsible for creating something they call auricular therapy. Auricular therapy is you could take and if you look it up, they'll show you a picture of an ear, and they can put different needles or points in the ear, and it reflects. It's like reflexology. And what he did is he found out there are 7 tones to the body. And if the body your body is vibrating with energy and tones, it's light, sound, and vibration. That's what keeps it in its place. So you have a frequency. And these tones are part of it. And if any one of these tones are off, it's almost like listening to an orchestra and the string section is sour or whatever. But if all 7 are in tune, we have this perfect frequency, this harmony in our system. And harmony is the most powerful state in the universe. So we want to be vibrating and then teaming with this energy and vibrating in harmony. But if one of these are out of harmony, it will show up in the body somewhere. So he's identified these. And what we did is we broadcast that frequency in light, 470 nanometer and 650 nanometer light. So that light is not only got the light frequencies, but it also is a beat. We can't read it, but guess what? Our body can. There's a movie called Rain Man, where Dustin Hoffman, they drop the toothpicks on the ground. He says 1,236 or whatever. Well, every person on earth can do that. What? But our brain is really good at screening it out. It's not. We're doing that all the time. Like the reason that screens, besides the poor lighting on a screen that we're looking at, our brain is trying to figure out which color each pixel is going to change to all the time. That's why we get stressed out when we will look at an LED screen. Not just that we're looking at a screen. If we looked at an analog screen like the old CRT screens,
yes,
our brain doesn't get as stressed out as it does looking at 1 million pixels, because our brain's trying to predict, is that going to be red, green, or blue? Is that going to be red, green, or blue? What's the mixture? Is that going to be black? Is that going to be what? It's always trying to predict the future. And so that's the stress that's happening. So what we're doing is we're going to use that same thing, but we're going to use it through the eyes. The eyes are closed, but we're working with optic nerve number 2 or cranial nerve 2. And so that flashing, this is a primitive reflex we have. So in the morning, when we used to get up in our caves and it was time to get up, we'd see the flash of light through the cave door.
Right.
That would activate our brain, wake us up. What we started to see within the flickering of a candle, a lot of people will meditate to candles, right? And they don't realize what they're doing is like, that's a primitive BrainTap machine. because that candle is flickering at 10 hertz frequency. All fires burn at 10 hertz frequency. So when somebody says that fire is mesmerizing, or I'm hypnotized by that fire, or you're in a romantic getaway and you have a fire going and you start to get a little frisky, that's because your body is creating acetylcholine. That's the feel good, fall in love hormone in neurotransmitters. So as these hormones follow the transmitters. So what happens is you're basically in the soup. You're now in the experience. Now, the problem with a candle or a fire, it doesn't change frequency, but LEDs do.
Yes.
So we could look at what an LED does, and we could change the frequency and modulate that frequency so the brain follows it. That's where the frequency following response comes from. That's where brainwave. So light does that. Now, the reason we use light and not just sound is that when you close your eyes to meditate, this goes back to why people have psychological issues when they meditate on their own. 30% of your brain goes to sleep when you close your eyes. It shuts down.
Okay.
That might be the 30% you need to work on. Because that's your executive function.
Oh,
your executive function shuts down. So if you really want to train the brain, you got to be awake. That's why that's why Silva says, sit in a straight back chair. Don't lay down. Roll your eyes up to 10 degrees. And there's a lot of reasons for all these things, but it's to really stay awake. We've got to, and that's why yoga was invented.
Yeah.
Was to keep you awake for meditation, because the body didn't have energy. So you could do all these yoga poses. And if somebody's out there doing yoga and they get up at the end of yoga class and they get their clothes on without doing the most important yoga, the most important one is the what do they call the corpse pose? When you're at the very end, when you're laying there, yoga nidra, that's the most important. So when I go to India, their medical doctors prescribe yogic postures for health. And they always say that the most important part of this program is at the very end, 10 minutes of just laying there. And, whether it be a guided yoga nidra session or just listening to music, that's when you get all the neuroplasticity. But a lot of people in America, they just jump up with their yoga mat and go, okay, I'm physically fit. That's not the purpose. The whole purpose of yoga. Now, of course, then they made it so, hey, the royals can still have sex when they're older, but that's just a byproduct as well. The reality was it was for meditation. That just is, as long as your body is young, you're going to be able to perform and do all those things you like to do. So that's part of it.
So let me ask you, so basically it's shooting red and blue light through the ear, right? It's going in, and then you have a flashing going on. So it can go through the eyelid. You're saying it can.
It's not really meant for the eyes, although autistic kids will keep their eyes open. It won't hurt you. It's so low level light. 470 nanometer light doesn't even penetrate the lids. But there's something called photobiomodulation. So our cells work very different than people. So people get things and they hoard it. They get storage units and they store it, and they just keep hoarding and hoarding and hoarding. Mm-hmm. The way photobiomodulation works is the cell fills up with energy. So let's say that cell isn't full of energy. It's going to absorb that light energy through something called chromophores. Those are on every cell. So the cell builds up, it fills with energy. As soon as it has enough energy, it then shares that energy with the cell next to it. And it continues that process until all the energy is distributed. So in our brain, we need energy to meditate.
Yeah.
So the best way to get energy into the brain is the way that God designed it, through our eyes. So those people with blue eyes bring in more light because those eyes were for northern hemispheres or upper Montana, where you're not going to get as much sunlight, you're going to have more winter and things like that. And brown-eyed people are for the equator, right? Because they have a lot of light and they don't need as much light in the brain. Now we need more light in our brain because we live inside. We're not getting outside enough. We're not getting enough light. There's actually, when I do my emails every morning, I have a little tablet that looks like a tablet, but it's actually John Ott light generator. It's a new one that I'm going to be bringing it out to the world, and it gives you all the vitamin D and wakes up the brain because it gives you full spectrum light for 20 minutes. Now I've got all the light my body needs through this. So you have to find all these ways to hack because we're not getting it.
Exactly.
Not getting in the world. So light is very important. That's one of the main things that separates us from anyone else on the planet. And they've been researched by third-party researchers and validated by publication. So we have all these different things to do it. Now, along with the light, we have sound. We have 4 different sounds going on.
That's what I wanted to go
Besides
into.
music. So we have binaural beats, isochronic tones, solfeggio frequencies, and Nogier frequencies. These are 4 different sound frequencies that trigger a cortical response in the brain, which means not the way we hear, although you can hear them at times when the volume goes down, you might hear a thump, 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 but that's only one of the sounds. There's different sounds and varying where we can place that frequency in the brain, because when you're wearing earphones, we can actually create what's called 360-degree sound. It's not true, but we're faking out the brain. That's like we're doing right now, wearing the earphones. So then those match. And then we also have music, 10-cycle music. This music is very important. We talked about that earlier. And then we also have words. Now we have over 600 sessions that are no words at all. They're different brain frequencies. So I'm going to go through the brain frequencies really quick so the listeners understand. And when we think about brain frequencies, we're talking about frequencies that have been around forever. If you and I were on your spaceship and we were moving toward Earth and we were to take a frequency reading of the planet, there'd be a lot of frequencies, but the main frequencies at the Earth level where we're at is 0.5 to 100, meaning that we have an evoked potential. We walk through the forest, it's 10 hertz. We sit near the ocean, it's 10 hertz. We go to the mountaintops, it's 7.8 hertz. We get into a volcano, it's 100 hertz. And that's why in tsunamis could be 80 to 90 hertz. That's why there were no animals killed in the tsunami. They weren't there. They could feel the energy and they left.
Yeah.
People were running out after the waves because we're so disconnected from the earth. That's called grounding. So we're designed to be on the planet, part of the planet, and part of the energy system of the planet. And so what we did is we said, these are the earth frequencies that we need. So we're going to feed those in. Now, we do that through the brain because as the brain goes, the body follows. So you got the brain, you got the spine. The spine is the keyboard of the brain. 70% of your nervous system is in your brain, not in your body. So when a chiropractor, which I love chiropractors and we work a lot with them, they're adjusting the body. We've proven with their own science that they're adjusting the brain. They think they're adjusting the spine, but really they're adjusting the brain because everything is about the brain. The bones don't move without the brain. The blood doesn't flow without the brain. So, there all of these things. That's why if you get a bullet to the brain, you're not functioning very well. Right. So you can get a bullet to almost any other part of the body and you can at least survive for a little bit. So as we think about these different things, so what we did is through our research, we started off with just light and sound. Over the years, we keep adding and adding and adding these. In 2013, we added the ear lights because our doctors were using lasers in hitting these auricular points. And I said, well, I think we could do that with our earphones. They're just laying there. Why don't we add it in and see what happens? So we did a study with some autistic children in California with Dr. Joquita Handy. And we showed that when we added the ear lights, we could at that time, we only used one of the Nogier frequencies. It was the one to shut off sympathetic drive, which is what's happening to these kids. And they were passing out. We just put the headsets on and boom, they were passing out. So now we said, well, why don't we just do it for everyone? So now that's part of every session is these 7 different frequencies, just because we want to tune the body. So it's in every cell of your body has a mirror neuron in it, or if you will, you don't just have mirror neurons in the brain. Your whole body is going out into your creation of reality here. And it's saying, wow, how's this light affecting me? And the cells are changing. How's this water I'm drinking? It's changing me. How's this conversation I'm having? Everything changes you. In fact, they now know, back in 2003 when they mapped the human genome and everybody was celebrating. Wow. But then they said, well, we mapped 1% of it. 99% of you're all junk. And that wasn't true. Now they know in 2018, they found out because we have equipment that's sophisticated enough that 99% changes every 40 seconds. So every 40 seconds, you're a different person. You're either showing up as your best self or you're showing up as a limited self. So what we want to do is we want to encourage the body to perform at its highest level by eating properly, moving and breathing and all those kind of things.
Wow. Okay. My other question is then you have all of these visualizations on your brain app. So how do you then determine the sounds? Because the light's pretty much consistent, right? It's
Every
consistent.
session is different.
Every
session we
session
have
is different. Okay.
Yes.
How did you determine that if you have 1,800 different varieties on your app? So how did you pair all of that?
Each series is a training.
Is it training? Okay.
It's a training. So we're training the brain. Remember, it's entrainment. So if you wanted to do the pain series, for instance, we talked about that a little earlier. We have 13 sessions.
Okay.
By the time you get to number 13, you're getting to theta in less than 2 minutes.
Wow.
Because we're training the brain to do it quickly.
So you're not, it's a process. You have to start at 1 to get to 13.
You don't have to, but it's best.
Okay.
And if somebody has a reaction, that's why our demo that we have in the 14-day trial, I have a session called the 21-day quick start, where I picked out the session. So once you go through the training once, you can skip around all you want.
Okay.
But we want you to really start off. Now, some people who are meditators, or some people just naturally go to those places, like creative people or people who are into healing, like especially doing like Reiki and things like that. They actually learn to adjust their brain waves already. They just don't know it. They're already going into these deeper states. And we see a lot of gamma with these kind of people, healers and creative people. And they're already getting outside of ordinary states of consciousness.
So with the meditations and the visual, is it customizable? So if a doctor or clinician, I know I had this question come up with a clinician, can this person customize it for the patient? Is there customizable settings?
There's no customizable settings right now.
Okay.
They can have them go through one of our protocols that we have, or they can create their own protocol. We have all the different sessions that they can do, but they're already encoded. What we are working on right now for the app, and there's no timeline for it, but it's something that we're working on, is creating a mixing board in the app where let's say you want to do your own affirmations after you've learned how to write them correctly, and you go through the series. The app actually is going to have you go through those questions, and it's going to auto-populate those your keywords into those affirmations. So if you don't have your own, you'll be able to read ones that we created for you, or you might want to read one of my scripts. Those are going to be available on the app.
Okay,
so
wonderful.
You can read it in your own voice. There's a book I wrote called The Power of Your Voice, which is available on Amazon for $200 for some strange reason. We stopped producing it years ago, but somebody's copying it and selling it. I hopefully are making a lot of money off it, but it talks about cassettes and things like that. It's a really old one, but I believe your voice is super powerful. If we can change your internal dialogue, so it's more loving, more compassionate, basically you become the person you want to be with, instead of denying your self-talk.
Well, it's fascinating because I've done some coaching work for health trauma, and I know I've had requests for people for affirmations, visualizations, their own personalized visualization. And it's interesting. I get a mix of, well, I want you to record it because they want to hear somebody else's voice. For me personally, I have to hear my own voice. So you're saying there's an opportunity within the app to be able to hear myself, because I feel as if the way I talk you're okay, Julie, that is how I'm thinking on the inside. And that's how I want to hear. You have the opportunity to customize and create that.
Yeah. Most people don't realize they're doing that all the time anyway. My voice to you is not my voice. It's your version of my voice. Right. So, that's a cool way of thinking. That's what happens in relationships. If you had positive relationships, then they're filtered through these positive voices. But if you had a negative relationship, now it gets filtered through that. And when they say those key words or that key look or whatever, I tell people it's the remote control. You've given away the power buttons.
Right. Those emotions, those darn emotions and those conversations, especially if you're pissed off at your husband and he says something, just tiny little thing, you're like, you're on it, right? That key word. So that's interesting. Well, thank you for clarifying that. One other question in regards to the headset. I know a lot of people in the biohacking world, they're concerned about EMF output. Does the head, especially with, red light, blue light, is there any EMF emission there's a video
I did on my channel too, where I show it. Now we have zero emissions. In fact, Dan DeBon, who wrote the book Radiation Nation, I'm on his board. So he says the first line of defense for EMF poisoning is BrainTap. And there's another website called Dr. EMF, and he basically everybody he talks to, and we validate it with science. So we show the EMF meter. Now you have to do it outside. If you're doing, a lot of people don't realize they're in a room. Like a lot of people go, oh, why do you have Bluetooth on it? I go, well, Bluetooth is 20% less than Wi-Fi.
Okay,
Turn
interesting.
on your phone. Even in my property that I just got, the 88 acres, I was just out there I have some people staying out there, and I said, I was trying to get them on the Wi-Fi, and I noticed we have 11 Wi-Fis, and I'm in 88 acres. I can't even see my neighbors.
Yeah.
Their Wi-Fi is broadcasting that far.
It's crazy.
And so
it's crazy.
That's all being mixed in, especially like like where I live, my home is in River Bend, North Carolina. I mean, there could be 30 Wi-Fi networks coming into my home.
It's
and
terrifying.
I have everybody's on an acre. So it's not like we're really close together. People live in apartment complexes. Everybody has their own router. You're not going to. So what I recommend people do, if they're really scared of that, is go to earthing.com, get a discount by using BrainTap, and get yourself a grounding mat.
Yes.
And take it everywhere. Where I'm standing right now, I have a grounding mat.
I have one too. I swear by it. I sleep on one. I work on one. I used to have grounding shoes. I absolutely swear by it. So I'm glad you just mentioned that. Thank you so much. I do want to go into the topic of a person that is maybe a skeptic, like, well, I want to try this. I want to try this. How will they know if it's making an impact?
Most people will know right away. I mean,
they will. Okay.
There'll be a physiological response. That's why the one study we did for NIH, where we showed a 39.8% reduction in stress, 90% of all people will have a physiological effect. They will feel it, even with the app alone. Okay. And if they have a smartwatch or a way to measure their sleep, they'll also see a significant improvement in their deep sleep that night, whether they did the session in the morning, in the afternoon, or the evening.
Do you have a recommendation how often, and do you wake up and put the headset on and do it immediately? Okay. You can
do it. I don't do it that way anymore because I have a whole 2 hours thing that I do in the morning. It's not my makeup or my hair. So, it's other things that I'm doing.
I love it. I want to know.
Okay. So I've had people, actually I'm in the middle of doing a documentary called War on the Brain, and they came and shot my morning ritual. So it's going to be in the documentary. And
I can't wait to see.
Basically it involves my infrared sauna. I'm just ordered a cold plunge.
Good for you.
We'll put that in the equation, at least 3 times a week, maybe more. But I have an infrared sauna. Then I have an InHarmony, a sound cushion, which vibrates gamma while I'm doing my meditation. And I use my BrainTap at the same time because we're partners with them. So I use that. And I usually do a gamma session in the morning with my meditation. And I still practice TM. So I'm doing my TM meditation usually for 30 minutes. Then I go over to my MagnaWave PEMF device and I do my 10-minute integration. That's when you lay on the floor and you do the corpse pose, but I'm not just laying there. I have the PMF on.
You are doing that. Okay. Gotcha.
Doing at the same time. Then I have resistance bands that I wear that are for blood flow restriction. And I do my workout. I used to go to the gym, but after COVID, I just been doing it at home. I have some barbells and I just act like I'm lifting weights and helps build my muscle. And then I have a 10-minute mini tramp. And while I'm doing that, I'm usually watching some kind of consciousness raising, like from Gaia. I love Gaia TV in the morning. There's so many things you can watch. And that's how I get my kind of needs met. And then at night, by my chair, if you were here, I have a grounding zero gravity chair that Clint Oprah used to sell. I have 2 of those. Okay. So I'm sitting in my grounded chair. And usually we watch a comedy or 2 at night. Good. Because I don't watch the news. Get my news from my wife. She usually keeps me up to date on all that. I don't need to watch it myself. I tell her to stop watching it, but she can't help herself.
Yes.
But anyway, I have a light helmet that I wear and a light pad that I wear across my abdomen. Yeah. And I do that every night. And I have a high powered laser that we put on different auricular points. And so I do something in the morning, do something at night. And during the day, I do my BrainTap. And now we have a red bed. It's a trifecta bed. If they want to, they can go to my channel and see it. It's a really super, I used to have an older one, but we just upgraded in the office. and it's tremendous. And I do my 2 o'clock session in that bed when I'm at the
That's
office. And
you're like the truest form of a biohacker, minus the fact that you're just starting to get into cold plunge.
yes, that's right.
That's
Right.
amazing. Do you have a sauna? Do you do sweat?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what I do
gotcha.
every morning. I have a pop-up sauna at home. I have an
You do.
in-light sauna down at the office. If somebody has a traumatic brain injury, we don't have them go into the sunlight sauna. It's a wood sauna, we
Yeah,
have 2
yeah.
of those.
I
We
used
have
to
2
have
of
one of
those in
those.
the clinic. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I love that. I do that.
I do too.
I do that every day when I'm home,
That's
either down
awesome.
at the office or I do it here. Yeah.
Good for
Yeah.
you.
wanna
You're
be
gonna
the
live.
happiest
You're gonna
person.
live. You're gonna be the oldest living person alive
Yeah.
with the
Well,
most intact brain.
Yeah, when I do the timing on the neuro check, which tells you your age, I'm usually 31. So
What?
yeah, my biological age. So
I've still yet to do that, which I totally want to do that. I'm kind of terrified of it as well.
no,
I have a
you'll
lot.
do
I have a
fine. You're
lot
out
of
there,
work to
you're
do.
active. You're as long as you're active and positive and smiling, we usually find they test well. It's those negative Nellies that
Yeah.
negative thinking has the biggest impact on heart rate variability that I've ever seen.
You see people age so quickly with their mind. I mean, I've watched, elderly people that have gotten sick or whatnot. It's like they aged within 2 years if they can't do something with their knee or they're in pain. I mean, it's that thinking piece just plays such a role in the aging process. So yeah, interesting. But I do have another question for you. So you developed an HR diagnostic system, which I know this clinic's really fascinated in learning more about. Can you share a little bit about your HR system? Do you use it? Is that something you use
Yes.
in practice? Okay.
Yeah. We
call
call it the
change?
neuro check. Yeah, we call it the neuro check. And
Okay.
we're going to be putting more and more things out about it. There's a video where you can look at it online.
Okay.
Where I'm doing a pre and post scan of flying on an airplane, where I show that flying across the country, how it affects your nervous system.
Yeah.
It took me from 100% down to 13% neurological function.
Yes.
And I didn't feel bad at all. I thought it was just normal. But what happened was it really crushed. I tell people, it's like Mike Tyson says, everybody has a plan until they get hit.
Yes.
Well, flying in an airplane, you get hit.
It's
And
unreal.
once you get hit, then you've got to have a way to rebound, because we're all going to get hit with stress. We're all going to get hit with problems. How do you rebound from them? How do you get your nervous system back online? How do you get back to health instead of focusing on the problem?
Yes. I love what you said in your TED Talk, where I'll quote you, many of us get into a survivor brain even before breakfast due to technology and the daily stressors of life versus living in a thriver brain. What is one suggestion to get from a survivor brain into more of a thriver brain, which I think is wonderful.
Look at your breath. I think something you can do right now, even without the BrainTap, all negative emotional states have one thing in common.
Okay.
Lack of breathing.
Lack of breathing.
So if you can breathe through any situation, that's going to get you into a thriving state. When you hold your breath, like think of anger, fear, anxiety, depression. Look at even the physiological effect. If I was to ask you, Julie, I need somebody to play a role in a play. They need to be able to be depressed. What would you need to do to convince me that you could act like somebody who's depressed?
I'd have to really get into that thought process of
You'd have to get in it. You'd have to physiologically roll your shoulders forward, droop your head. Now you've just compressed your lungs.
Mm-hmm.
You have no breath.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I was to say you just won the lottery, how would you be breathing? And somebody's handing you $1 million check. You're going to throw your shoulders back. You're going to breathe. Those flow states also have something in common. You're breathing.
Yeah.
All physiological states of ecstasy and joy and happiness, there you have some connection to breath, or you have a connection with somebody else's breath. All these things are happening, and breath is the key. Yes. So that's why we partnered with the breath people on our app, and we have somebody could take a master class just by doing it with BrainTap, because now you're getting your physiology in the right state. You're now practicing breathing. And I'm not an expert at breath, but I know enough for myself. And so I teach people the 3 breaths. Like a client, I would say in the morning before you get out of bed, start practicing rapid breathing. It's called Breath of Fire. You can learn about that online. Mm-hmm. And then in the afternoon, I say, if it's good enough for the Navy SEALs, it's good enough for you. We're all fighting our own battles. They do box breathing.
Okay.
So the 5-count box breath.
Yep.
Yeah. And you do that in the middle of the day. And then at night, you do the 4-8 breath to go to sleep, which
Wow.
trains the nervous system. So when you breathe in, you're triggering the sympathetic system. When you breathe out, you're training the parasympathetic system.
Right.
And the problem is, like I said in my TED talk, people get locked in that neurophysiology. And when you're breathing, you unlock that.
Yes.
Now, if you can focus on just, I use the affirmation in our recording, so hum, just because those 2 words are the sounds babies make when they're first born and they're breathing. And by the way, when you connect that breath, it makes the sound of om.
Oh, interesting.
And every baby makes it. That's the sounds our lungs make naturally.
Wow.
So there's a lot of ancient traditions that I've researched over the years and I don't actually, now I can talk about it. Before, people would think, oh no, it's got to be this or that. But the reality is that there's no ancient tradition that says I kept the wisdom of the tribe with the youngsters. They always keep it with the elders. So they must have been doing something right with their brains.
Yes.
Something that we're not doing. Because what we do is there were a few people when I was growing up that would become senile when they got older, but it was very rare.
Right. It's unreal now. It's on Alzheimer's.
30-year-olds are getting this.
Again, I mean, I could go into another conversation about that. I have my theories on that one, but I won't keep you. But I do want to ask you just my last few questions. What are you looking forward to with BrainTap? And what excites you about the future of it?
Well, the biggest excitement I have is 3 things.
Okay.
Number 1, we have a partnership with a group called Awakened, which is, they have 60,000 salespeople and growing. And they're going to launch in Hong Kong this year. And to get 1 billion brains, you need at least a couple 100,000 people out there.
Yes.
Because like I said, this is like describing atmosphere of fish. The Awaken group can actually have these home parties, or they can refer a friend, and then they can do it. Now our clinics are already doing that, right? The clinical people. So it's a little bit different. And then number 2, really getting involved with TB12 and TBRX and doing things with the professional sports. If I could just do that and make my living, I would love to just go and see sports events and, be around sport and do those kind of things. That'd be, because I
take
did
your
coach
kids,
for a while.
Take your grandkids there. That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
That's a dream life for my husband.
We have one of my newest partners that I've been working with. His name is Dad Metcalf, and he has a device called the 60 Up, and he's getting people out of wheelchairs, and we're combining it with BrainTap for dementia and Alzheimer's, and that'll be the movement part, and it's a phenomenal piece of equipment. You'll see it if you follow us on social media, you'll see we're going to start launching that, and I think that combined with the clout and the impressions that TB12 can make, and Tom Brady and his team, and working with his PTs. And then number 3 is we have another group that's going to be launching in India. I go to India all the time. So we're looking at, right now we make our equipment in China, and we're looking at building it in India because that's the most populated country in the world. They have 1.6 million. And some people go, well, there's nobody there has any money. The reality is that their middle class is bigger than the United States, population wise. And their upper class millionaires are more than the United States. So even though there might be 1 million people that can't afford it, there's 600,000 people, twice the size of the United States, that this is nothing to them. So in between there, we're gonna really launch it. And the nice thing is, the one group in India, they own the cricket league. So when I told them about Tom Brady, they go, we got a guy that's bigger than Tom Brady. But I have no idea who he is. I got to learn this cricket thing. I watch it. When I go over there, I'm like, it's weird, but I said, love to talk to him, see what we can do. They also own their Grammys over there.
Wow.
So they're going to get it in the hands of the influencers in India. So some really big things going. And within the next 5 years, we could have our 1 billion brains and change this planet. Because I don't know if you've ever researched the Maharishi effect, but
I did after you told me about it. Yes.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're not going to do it like the Maharishi did, but we're going to do it because I think if we bring down the temperature in this world and stop these crazy people that don't know how to think, we need to get people thinking again. Instead of making America great, we need to make the world think.
We do.
And we need to figure out just so people understand where I'm coming from. They did a study. If we took all the people in the planet we put them in the state of Texas, they would have more room than the average person does in Japan. So we're not overpopulated. We're not utilizing our resources. There's plenty of people, and we shouldn't be killing people to try to make more room on this planet. We need to be healing people, and because we don't know who the next Einstein is, who the next Nikola Tesla is. We have no idea who's the next person to make the greatest invention. We need to create an environment where they can thrive.
I think you have a concept that's you are Einstein. I really do. And that's why I want to ask you my final question before we talk about where people can buy the headset. What is the legacy that you hope to leave?
Well, I hope that I inspire somebody to create more of this kind of technology. I believe that brainwave entrainment will be in every home, just like TVs. We've talked about it before. It used to be, when I was growing up, I remember getting the first TV from my grandparents, gave us their black and white TV. And then, of course, then we got a color TV. We were the first ones in the neighborhood to get it because my dad wanted to watch sports in color, Yeah. But I think that brainwave entrainment will be there because it should be, instead of broadcasting these really terrible EMF waves, they could be broadcasting Auger frequencies. They could be broadcasting solfeggio frequencies. We could be bathing in healing frequencies all day long. We already have the technology up there. All we have to do is change the frequency. It's like, and so I believe that my legacy, we're going to prove that learning is not right now, our schools are still in the 1800s. That we need an evolution or a revolution in our schools, not teaching them this crazy stuff that they want to teach them. That has nothing to do with it. We need to teach people how to think.
Yeah.
So my legacy is going to be that I hope to touch the lives of every person on earth by teaching them that everyone is a genius. Everyone has talents and skills. Everyone has a superpower. And if I can help you activate yours, we have a better planet. And you can then go train your people, because I can only reach the people in my sphere of influence. You have your sphere of influence. And if people understand that their sphere of influence, you're changing. They now know epigenetically, you're changing 7 generations forwards and backwards. And it's being done right now. It's not being done later. And it's not science. It's not science fiction anymore. It sounds like science fiction, but it's science faction. So
I love it.
We have this fact. And so I think my legacy is going to be, hey, this guy didn't give up. There were plenty of times when I could have given up, but the universe just kept bouncing me back here. And I'm, like a dog with a bone. I just keep doing it. And people go, wow, this is great. When did you invent it? Oh, I've been doing it since 1986.
It's mind blowing. Yeah.
There's very few people. I do know a couple people that were around at that time with me, but most of them have passed on to bigger and better things in the universe. They're not here anymore. So
yeah, but God had a plan for you. I really think so. I think God had a plan for you, and you were so tenacious, so curious. And I think your heart is completely in the right place. And I do believe your mission is going to happen. So I think it's wonderful. Now I want to let people know, this headset is available on your website, correct?
Yes.
For purchasing. Okay. And they can also go to the App Store and download the BrainTap app.
Yes.
Wonderful.
What they can do is on the app, they can download it for 14 days. They're not going to be charged until that 15th day. So if they don't like it, just cancel it. What I just found out was we have a 76% of the people that download the app to try it stick with it.
That's wonderful.
So they like it. And our average user uses it 28 times a month.
That's amazing.
So give it a shot. You got 14 days to try it out, get better sleep, think better, perform better. And if you like it, then you can upgrade to the headset.
I love it. I love it. And where you can go purchase this at is at www.drpatrickporter.com, where he has an actual separate website for the BrainTap technology, where you can research BrainTap technology at www.braintap.com. You're remarkable.
Well, thank you.
I loved the conversation today, and I hope you all loved the conversation as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Patrick Porter. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Julie, for having me.
A special thank you to our guest expert, Dr. Patrick Porter of www.braintap.com. All of his links are found in the description of this episode. If you like what you heard, please hit subscribe, and you will be notified of future episodes. Thank you for listening to the Flip and Shift Expert Series podcast. Rate us, follow us, and like us on our social media links.